tonight Andrew Singh here with us from the Erlanger United Methodist Church to do our invocation. Thank you so much for being here with us. Okay, please rise for the pledge. Ms. Hoffman, if you can please take roll.
Ms. Nicely,
Present.
Mr. Cahill,
Present.
Ms. Kyle,
Here.
Mr. Skidmore, Mr. Hermes, Ms. Skidmore, Ms. Reckers,
Here.
Ms. Jasper Lucas,
Here.
Ms. Wilson.
Thank you. Okay, you've received a copy of the minutes for the January 3rd, 2023 regular council meeting and the January 31st, 2023 special council meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to be made at this time? Okay, seeing none, do I entertain a motion that we adopt as presented? Ms. Reckers, Ms. Kyle, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carried. All right, you've also received a copy of tonight's agenda. Are there any additions to be made at this time? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion. Ms. Jasper Lucas?
You were
Ms.
asking if there was any changes to the agenda, correct? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. I am making a motion that we, I guess, table part of the budget amendment. Because there's basically two things within one budget amendment, and I still have questions about the moving of the $217,820 since the information that we requested during the caucus meeting was just received today. I understand that the $2 million that needs to be transferred needs to be done today, or the first reading needs to be done, and I am fine with that, but I didn't realize both of them were going to be put into one amendment. And I also didn't realize we weren't going to get the information until today. So there's a lot of information that I haven't even, we just received some of the information at 5 o'clock. And the other information that I asked for wasn't received until today when I asked for it again. So.
And you've stated that, and we did have an employee that was on vacation last week, so I apologize for
I understand
delay.
that, but when was it provided by her?
I'm sorry, but we have, if you have a motion on the floor.
I do.
To make an adjustment to the agenda.
I do have an
then
additional
do we have a
question
second?
about what you just said. So the information that we requested.
Ms. Jasper Lucas. Okay.
Can I ask a question about what you stated?
Sure.
Okay. So we weren't provided, council wasn't given the information that was requested until today, but it's my understanding that Ms. Kramer provided it before she left on vacation.
Okay.
Okay. I'm just saying, I'm not going to blame Ms. Kramer for being on vacation last week for that being the reason that council didn't receive the information. It seems that council is given information frequently at the very last minute so that we are basically forced to have a first reading on things. This has probably happened at least 3 times in the last few months, where we receive information that was requested well in advance, the day of a meeting. There is no time to discuss it, and that is why I'm making the motion that's been seconded. So I just wanted to clarify that, because you made a point of saying that Kara was on vacation last week. And I want to make a point of saying, is that why we didn't get the information till today?
The information that you requested has nothing to do with the budget amendment. So I'm not 100% sure I understand why it has any bearing on the budget amendment that's put in place, or put on the agenda. There's a motion
questions-
and a second.
Okay, so are you allowed to say
So-
things about what I'm saying, and then I'm not allowed to comment back?
Ms. Jasper Lucas, we're going to move on. Is there any further discussion? There's a motion and a second on the floor.
Just for clarification, I think if the motion is to strike something from the first reading, I think that's a little different than changing the agenda. Because I don't think we can really split the ordinance up on the agenda. I understand what you're trying to do and wanting to do. I think that and I'm not trying to jump in the weeds here too much, but I think it would be probably more appropriate if your goal is to have a council vote to remove the 217,820 from this first reading. I think that would probably be more appropriate while we discuss it at legislation. That your motion would be to amend this ordinance and do the first reading just on the 2 million.
I haven't even had time to read the data that was sent to us at 5 o'clock today. So to be even discussing it tonight, I was still working till 5:30.
I'm just
So
saying
I can't-
procedurally, your motion what your motion, I think, was to split this ordinance, correct?
I wouldn't have done it as one amendment. I would have done it as 2, and then we wouldn't be in this situation. We would be able to table one amendment and still have the other one.
And that's where I'm just saying, from a procedural perspective, I think your motion is to strike from the first reading the 217,820.
It is.
Okay.
I don't want to delay the 2 million being moved,
Right, and that's
because
why I was
I
just
recognize, right, yes.
procedurally.
Okay, okay.
That your motion really is to just do the first
But-
reading on the 2 million.
Jennifer,
Correct.
for clarification, I was the one that combined the budget amendment.
And that's
because-
fine.
Because when we constantly are doing budget amendments, it makes it harder for me to keep track of it. So I combined it so I can keep a dialogue and know exactly. So
Right.
if we're going to hold the 217, we might as well hold the 2 million, because it's not going to be spent between now.
But I thought we had to have the first reading tonight in order to stay within the 60-day bid
Oh.
period.
Well, we're not going to.
Yeah, I mean, in reality, we are not going to spend the $2 million between now and the end of the fiscal year. However, we do want to make sure that we're putting that $2 million in the bucket for the PW facility. So in reality, do we need to do it? No, but it's really transparent and clear if we're taking that 2 million and adding it into that already existing bucket of money so that we can move forward with the bids. So,
And that's why I said, I'm fine with moving forward with that part of it, but I still have additional questions.
and you've made that clear, and Mr. Gatlin has explained what we need to do in order to accommodate your request. So we're going to need to do that.
But was he also, this is where I was confused, was he also saying that we needed to discuss it tonight during legislation?
No.
Okay,
no,
that's
no.
where I was confused.
No.
Okay.
I'm just saying that I think your motion would be a motion to strike the 217,820 from this first reading. I think that's your intent, that you don't want to discuss the 217,820 tonight, you don't want to vote on that tonight, but that you do want to vote on the 2 million tonight, I think, is.
That's exactly what I want to do.
Okay, and all I'm saying is I think I think your motion is kind of like a motion to split the ordinance, to change it on the agenda. And all I'm saying is I think that motion is more appropriate when we get to legislation, doing a motion to alter the document that's in front of you prior to it being a first reading.
Now I understand what
All right,
you were
that's-
trying to say. To do during legislation.
Yes.
I thought you meant discuss it during
No.
legislation. Okay.
No, and I know I'm being like hyper-technical here, but
No,
I think that's probably the appropriate, because anytime there's any amendment to the document that would be in front of you, I just think when we're in that section of legislation, that's the time to raise that issue.
got it.
All right, sorry. You do have a motion and second on the floor, though.
Do I need to withdraw that?
That would probably be best.
Okay, I'll withdraw.
All right, thank you.
Okay. With no additions made to the agenda at this time, do I entertain a motion that we adopt as presented? Ms. Kyle, Ms. Nicely, any discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed? All right, motion carried. Our first special presentation for this evening, we have Mr. Lee Kroom here and his team from Triad. I think we have a presentation all queued up. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Very, very glad to be here. Mayor, staff, council, thank you for having us tonight. Really excited to share this. I would like to point out I have a couple of colleagues tonight. So Sydney Murray with our marketing and communications team is here. Christine Russell, who leads our strategy group, is here as well. And then I'm going to share the podium with David McAleese, who leads our research group as well. So again, my name is Lee Kroom. I'm the president and CEO of Northern Kentucky Triad. If you're not aware, we are the economic development company for Boone, Kenton, and Campbell counties. And, you know, economic development can mean a lot of different things. Signage on Main Street is economic development. The new Brent Spence Bridge is economic development. We focus really on working with big companies and helping grow the economy of Northern Kentucky. So when you think about companies like Citi and Mazak and Fidelity and how they got here, Triad through our years would have worked with them to help them land here. We like to talk about our purpose for the work that we do today as economic development has changed is really about bringing opportunity and prosperity for all Northern Kentuckians. And we say it that way because we want the river cities to know that we serve them in economic development as much as we serve the unincorporated county portions of our community. And that when we're successful and all of the community is prospering, then we know that we're really doing a good job. I would ask too, as we move through this, really to the extent that it's possible, I'd love to answer questions, whether they're for me or the team that's here. And I'm going to go a little bit quick through the first part of this because I really want to get to David to share some new information and some new programming that we rolled out late last year that we're really, really excited about. But just kind of a quick summary, really a unique idea when Triad was created in 1987, that the idea of an economic development company working on behalf of the community to grow the economy was really an unusual idea at that point. You can see some of the numbers of the projects that we've done through the years in terms of total numbers. We actually just mailed out today, I think Emmy mentioned she got it in the mail before I actually got it delivered to our office, our 2022 annual report. And we're really thrilled to be talking about what those results are. I'll give you kind of a quick preview. Over 2,300 jobs added to the community last year, just short of $300 million of investment from those jobs. And one of the things that we're really thrilled about, we always talk about good jobs. We want good jobs. How do you develop or how do you define what is a good job? Last year's average wage was over $67,000 for those jobs. So to us, that's a good job, a job that you can have a house or a family and do the kinds of things that you want to do. So when you think about Triad and who we are and the work that we do, we really think of it in two lenses. The first lens is traditional economic development, and that is working with those big companies, helping them navigate what is called the site selection decision. So a company gets to a point, they think we've got to grow, we need to open a new facility, we need to invest our capital, we need to employ people. Where and how do we get that done? And so, and actually a great example, we worked with Atlas Air a couple years ago when they built their new facility. And one of the things they shared in that process is, we're great at flying planes. And a really cool kind of side note, pivot, We got to visit the other day the airport. The last 747 that will ever be made was purchased by Atlas Air and is currently sitting at CVG. So just a random pivot as my brain is in 7 o'clock mode. But so Atlas is saying we're really great at flying cargo in planes all over the world, but we're not great at making these types of decisions. As a matter of fact, we haven't opened a new facility in 25 years. And so you think about corporations, they're great at the thing they do, but this decision of where to invest and where to build is very, very risky for them. And so part of our team, they're really experts at helping clients work through that process and putting together a package that highlights how Northern Kentucky can be that solution for them. What's the right piece of dirt? What's the right building? What's the right infrastructure needs, the right utility needs, the right workforce needs, and then, yes, working with Emmy and the staff here, what are the local and state incentives that we might bring to bear on that? Hopefully that is successful and the company enjoys many years of work and employment here. The other side of our company, led by Christine, is strategy work. We like to think that as we go through that process with our customers, we're learning things. What are their choices? What are their needs? Just like if you were, well, David came to us from Macy's. You know, Macy's is always wondering what their client is, what their customer's doing. What are they buying next? Where are they going? Well, we're thinking the same thing so that we can then come and work with you to say, all right, this is what the impact of your decision may or may not be on the type of client we work with. This is what clients are looking for today from an office building or a site or a workforce story. And so hopefully those two sides of the business work together. The more we learn about customer preferences, the better decisions that we can make as a community, the better decisions we make as a community, the better product that we have to recruit companies here. Again, I mentioned these just a minute ago. I said just over $67,000. I meant just under $67,000 in the average wage. And you can see the different industry sectors. I think this information is provided, so I won't jump into a lot of detail here. So one of the things that we launched last year, we had this opportunity a couple years ago. COVID hits. As a matter of fact, a little brain pivot for you. COVID is in full-blown shutdown mode. And very shortly after that, we had our first client meeting in this facility. And it was strange. We had one person sitting there and one person sitting there and one person sitting there. And we were all about 12 or 14 feet away from each other as we tried to figure out if we could help this organization. But what started happening at that point is our project pipeline never stopped growing. Companies never stopped choosing. And as everybody saw, the economy really surged through that time. And we started thinking about what do we need to do that we're not doing to make sure that the prosperity we're enjoying in Northern Kentucky, because if we're being honest, things are not perfect. There's always going to be a challenge. But by and large, we have a high quality of life in Northern Kentucky. We have a high degree of prosperity in Northern Kentucky. And what are the things that we started thinking, what are the things that we need to be doing to ensure that stays the same? So we created this program called Build and Elevate Northern Kentucky, because that's what we wanted to do. Right? We wanted to build and elevate on the success that we were currently having. And we came up with these 4 channels of work: data-informed community decision-making. David's going to share a lot more about that with you here in just a moment. And a really exciting, cool tool that we have created for your use. Delivering customized workforce solutions. That's something every single client that we talk to, and probably as you look at your own city services, workforce is a tremendous challenge. And we know we've got to find new and innovative ways to meet that workforce challenge. So we created a channel of work for us to be in that. Targeted business growth. I'm in a mindset that we as a community are really in a favorable position to recruit companies here. But we also have a finite amount of resources. We have a finite amount of workforce. We have a finite amount of land and buildings to put them in. And we want to go out and attract the highest quality companies and jobs that we can to the community. So targeted business growth gives us a set of tools and processes to be able to do exactly that. And then we've got activating the Northern Kentucky Port Authority. The Northern Kentucky Port Authority is an entity that's been around for more than 50 years. Christine actually leads this initiative for us. And the Port Authority it's actually not a port on the river. It's an economic development entity. It has some statutorily granted tools that would allow us to assemble land, revitalize land, and get it in a position so that when we have a good client, we've got the right piece of property for them to be able to develop on. And then finally is this data-informed community decision-making thing that David will talk about. But what really led us to that is, we're a little bit of a wonky region here in that, we're at the northern apex of Kentucky, but we're part of a metropolitan area that largely sits in Ohio, but we also have Indiana as a part of it. And so when we start looking for economic data, if you just look at metro level data, it can be a little distorted. How does Erlanger really compare to that? How does Florence compare? What does Dayton look like? How does Campbell County stand up? And so we wanted to really get a data set and tool sets to help us highlight that information. Again, the thinking is the better information that we have, the better decisions that we can make as a community to be prosperous. So with that said, I'm going to take a pause and let David come up and share with you a little bit more about these tools that we've created.
Thank you, Lee. So picking up on what Lee was saying, there is no question that as we look back over the last 10 years, the three-county Northern Kentucky economy has experienced pretty significant growth. No question. We see that when population increased 8%, total employment has increased 23%, household income 25%, wages. The unemployment rate has dropped from about 7% to now just over 3%. Labor force participation rate, while it has declined, we typically, and we do run better than the overall Kentucky average as a region. So everything we do here at Triad, from business attraction and retention to workforce assistance, can be distilled down to our desire to promote opportunity and prosperity for all Northern Kentuckians. However, as our economy continues to evolve, we may find that we have different definitions for what prosperity entails, as inputs such as capital, talent, land become scarce and further constrained. And at the same time, and presuming we all agree we want to continue on this growth trajectory, should we be concerned that we could be at risk of leaving some segments of our population behind? So for us at Triad then, the question becomes, how do we frame our objectives in the face of these increasingly scarce resources and increasing challenges? And how do we leverage data in our community in various roles as practitioners, policymakers, or the general public to have these kinds of conversations? The starting point for us was the development of a data dashboard to be used as a tool to provide business and community stakeholders with relevant data to inform better decision-making, along with fostering an environment that allows us to have these kinds of discussions. The Northern Kentucky Atlas was developed in partnership with our vendor Metopio and provides an open and interactive source for data on a wide-ranging set of topics pertinent to our region. Users can access the Atlas through a web browser or even on their smartphone, free of charge. The platform enables us to collect, analyze, and disseminate data to the community, while also putting that power in the hands of individual users. We can utilize the Atlas to both identify our region's strengths, which then can be leveraged for community and economic development, as well as to better understand the factors that have potential to disrupt or hinder our prosperity. It's worth noting that improving the overall well-being of the community through data and subsequent insights is an aspirational goal, and to some extent, Triad is stepping outside of our traditional lane. We know we're not the only organization that's using data, but as we were in the development stages of this initiative, we consistently heard there was a desire to have a go-to data source for our partners and for the community. We also recognize we cannot solve all the challenges facing our community, but we are in a unique position to leverage our partnerships and bring together private stakeholders, public stakeholders, and subject matter experts in order to help develop strategies or refine current approaches. So now that you have an idea of the what and the why behind the Atlas, let's take a few minutes to give a brief overview of some of the functionality. So first and foremost, the Atlas is a data visualization tool, and most of the data is available, can be analyzed using the mapping function Available layers include the 3 counties, Northern Kentucky jurisdictions, as well as more localized geographies like zip codes and census tracts. So the map we're looking at now just shows simply median household income by major jurisdictions based on the last 5-year American Community Survey data. The darker the shading, the higher the median household income. The data can be aggregated into charts and graphs, which allow for either comparing changes in variables over time or across places within the region. In addition to the Cincinnati metropolitan area, the atlas gives us the ability to compare against 12 peer cities. Those peer cities were selected either because they're comparable in terms of population size or demographic composition, and most importantly, there tend to be those metropolitan areas that we compete most directly with for economic development projects. By benchmarking the Northern Kentucky region against ourselves over time, or the greater Cincinnati metro area, or these peer cities, we can start to gain an understanding, at least at a zoomed out level, where our region's strengths lie or where we may be lagging. Lastly, one of the more interesting functions in the atlas is this scatter plot module. And this allows us to directly compare 2 variables to ascertain whether there's a relationship between the 2. So the graph on the screen is simply comparing median household and high school graduation or high school attainment by census tract across the 3 counties. Not surprisingly, this would suggest there's a strong correlation, strong relationship. Your income tends to go up as your educational attainment tends to go up. I'll say it's important to point out, obviously, that correlation's not necessarily causation. This really just says there's a relationship between the 2. There obviously is more variables at play here, but really, again, allows us to throw the data up against the wall to start to see what kind of trends or, again, relationships we see. And all that gets tied back to the mapping function. So each one of those dots, and I can use the pointer if you can see on the screen, I think it's getting washed out, but the dots are the census tracts, and the size of those dots are the population in those tracts, and they all correspond to one of those areas in the map itself. So what kind of information can we find in the atlas? So as we develop the platform's framework with Metopio, we started with 3 broad areas of impact, summarized as wealth, health, and place. From there, we categorized topics into 8 buckets, ranging from demographics and housing to education and infrastructure. Within the 8 buckets, there are currently a little over 200 data topics, many of which can be further stratified by age, race, and ethnicity. For the most part, these are publicly available data sets. I think over half of the 200 topics come out of the American Community Survey, which is put out by the Census Bureau. However, I will say the atlas drastically reduces the time and effort required to access this information. And certainly one of the nice features that allows us is that last bullet point is we can add topics and data sets as we go. And certainly we believe leveraging the atlas as a tool to assess these topics will help us understand where we are today and what trends have occurred over the last 10 years. So one of the examples, I mentioned the ability to incorporate additional data sets would be the school report card data, which is more region-specific information that we've since added. And certainly I'm not trying to recreate the wheel here. A lot of this was pulled directly from the Department of Education's school report card data sets. But what we've done is try to curate key tables that we think are relevant, that start to paint a picture about the state of our region's schools and school districts. And right now, so this slide is showing a summary of the overall performance indicators by district for the 2021-2022 school year. But if you go to the atlas, you'll see things like the KSA assessments for 3rd grade reading, 8th grade math. I think we've added high school graduation by school districts. Again, trying to give a flavor for some of that data. And then if you want the full depth and breadth, we certainly point the user to the Department of Education's resource here. One of the main call-outs that came out of reviewing this data was the mixed performance we saw around third grade reading in our school districts. And in fact, an estimated 1 in 5 Northern Kentucky third graders scored at a novice level based on the most recent KSA. That's important because, the research has found that third grade reading is a key predictor of later life outcomes. Things like high school graduation, college graduation, career readiness. And it's been in the news recently across the river. I know Governor DeWine highlighted this in his State of the State address and is really looking at this in Ohio. I think the stat was 60% of Ohio's third graders were reading at a proficient level, which means 40% were below proficient, obviously. And obviously that's been exacerbated by the pandemic. So again, a way that we're able to look at some of that information for the localized area. In rounding out, I wanted to at least bring something that was relevant to the city of Erlanger here. And so, one of the topics that we've been looking at is housing affordability. I know that's been top of mind for many of us in the region. I actually listened to a recent webinar that was put on by a site selection consulting group that suggested housing affordability was the new labor force readiness in terms of what companies are looking for or what they're concerned with when making location decisions. So the map on the left side of the screen shows median housing costs across census tracts in Kenton County. And this is based on the latest American Community Survey, where median housing costs for the city of Erlanger was just over $1,000. And you can see from the bar chart to the right, those orange bars, that the city of Erlanger, and that's this bar right here, is pretty much on par with overall Kenton County, as well as the city of Florence and the overall 3-county Northern Kentucky region. We then laid that up against housing cost burden, which the Department of Housing and Urban Development identifies housing cost burden households as those who pay more than 30% of their income for housing. And keeping that cost below 30% is intended to ensure households have enough money to pay for other non-discretionary items. The purple dots on the chart indicate the percent of occupied housing units that are considered cost burden. And so we start to see this bifurcation occurring. So for example, the city of Covington has the lowest median housing costs, but also the highest percent cost burden, while at the same time, Edgewood has the highest median housing costs, but the lowest cost burden. Erlanger, again, is at just over 22%, is right in line with the overall county average and the overall region average. And this is an important to monitor and to start to have those discussions, because certainly as housing becomes more expensive, our families need to start thinking about trade-offs in terms of, again, broader consumption, potentially locating in less convenient, less desirable areas further from employment centers, things of that nature. So rounding this out, as we look forward, as we go forward and look at next steps, right now we're looking to focus on identified priority topics that potentially could be risks to, again, that goal of prosperity. We're looking for opportunities to partner with organizations that are already active or have expertise in this space and conduct a more thorough or deep dive analysis. Our goal is to help highlight some of the work that is being done in the community and leverage that collective expertise and resources to hone strategies using the data. And then finally, utilizing the data to try to tackle these challenges with the Atlas surveying as that tool to help establish that common vision. With that, I will pause and want to say thank you again for the time and opportunity to speak before you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As somebody with an economics degree, this is amazing. I mean, you realize how incredible the amount of data that you've collected and how it could be used to better Northern Kentucky. It's just absolutely awesome. So thank you for your efforts. It's wonderful.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to share it. I don't have an economics degree. the aha moment for me as we started doing this last year on the importance of this data, and David talked about third grade reading score, and is the number 900 third graders that aren't at it? So about 900 to 1,000 third graders in northern Kentucky today are not reading at level. And you say, okay, well, who cares? Well, I care, for one. And you care because once you pass through third grade, education changes. And when you cannot read at level at third grade, the opportunity to, or not the opportunity, the likelihood of not finishing school, not having good employment, involvement with the judicial system, teen pregnancy, all start to increase. So bad outcomes increase when you don't read at the third grade level. And there's almost 1,000 kids in northern Kentucky today that are third graders that are at that level. Well, what's 1,000? Well, 1,000 times 12 years of school is 12,000 students in our school system today that are at risk of not reading at level and having, not guaranteed, but having those bad outcomes occur to them. So that statistic just jumped off the page at me as just an incredible number. And we think about the economy, we think about growth, we think about prosperity. How much better would our community be if we didn't have the negative cost associated with that, and we also had the productive cost of having them in the workforce and being productive and paying taxes and doing things. So that was my aha moment with this. So we strongly encourage you, use the Atlas. Just go to your web browser and search for Northern Kentucky Atlas. It's amazing what you can do. And I don't want to take up any more time, but we can answer questions if there's anything out there.
A couple questions. On the Port Authority, I'm a little bit familiar with what the Cincinnati Port Authority does. Do you all have the same capacities, maybe not at the same level that they do, but I guess can you talk a little bit more about that? And then my second question that's related to that is, is the Port Authority able to partner with other organizations like, we have some houses in Erlanger that have been worked on by HONK, Housing Opportunities for Northern Kentucky. And so I'm just wondering if those are the types of organizations that the Port Authority could partner with.
Yeah, so the Cincinnati Port Authority, or port authorities in Ohio generally, are a good comparison. But on the industrial side of the equation, the Cincinnati Port Authority is very involved in housing policy and working in blighted properties. We don't envision in the near future that being a part of the strategy of this Port Authority. We really think of it being more in helping prepare and assemble industrial lands. From a partnering question, absolutely, we partner, there's no end to the people that we're going to partner with to be successful.
My next question is, can I get a copy of the presentation?
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. We'll send that to Emmy and just,
okay.
or Bill, I think, has it. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, well, we won't take up any more time unless maybe you have a question.
No, I just wanted to say thank you for being here, and thank you for being an awesome partner. I just want to tell a really quick story. So you all do a wonderful job of attracting businesses and walking them through the process. But what's even more awesome is when you don't get the business that's coming here, and what you do with the information and the debriefing of that process, and how can we take that lost opportunity and turn it into an action plan. And we saw that recently in the city of Erlanger, where we lost a potential incredible business. But what we did is we sat down at Triad and we figured out, what were we missing? What can we change? And from that, the IRB was born. And working with Corporex and trying to figure out, how do we make these Circle Port properties as marketable as possible and get them site ready, because we understood that the time to market was the issue. So being able to take those losses and turn them into action is fantastic. So thank you for being a partner, and thank you for helping us walk through this process with the IRB and the relationship with Corporex and all of the relationships that we've grown. So
yeah, those are. I promised my team I would clean my language up in public. Those are bad, grumpy days at Triad, but it's a great example of the two sides of the business working together, learning why a customer made the decision that they did, and how can we get better for next time so that we can compete. And that's exactly what we'll do, so thank you for that. And I'll tell you, from our company's perspective, it's our pleasure to get to do this work, to really get to serve this community in this way. So thank you for letting us be here. We appreciate it, and we'll give you your meeting back now.
All right, thanks, Lee.
Thank you.
All right. Next special presentation this evening is Lieutenant Claire on the Erlanger traffic safety.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to be able to present tonight about the grants that we manage through Erlanger and the partnerships that we have with our local, state, and federal partners. They've been very innovative and collaborative and have led to some really great achievements that we're excited to share with you tonight. The I-75 corridor project is our largest grant in traffic safety that we manage. That came as part of it's a collaborative partnership with Erlanger and 5 other cities in northern Kentucky that are situated along the I-75 corridor. The corridor, as you know, interchanges with 275 and is centered in the center of our city. Historically has been a huge burden on our resources in the police department, with officers spending hours on the interstates, sometimes entire shifts, dealing with collisions and traffic issues that come along with that interchange. The I-75 corridor, when it was established, was only designed to carry 75,000 vehicles a day, and today, with our industry picking up and everything that's increased around our city and in our city, that corridor carries now 175,000 plus, which is more than twice what it was designed to carry. So this partnership was established in 2017 for about a 24-month period. The state realized that there was an issue, and a study was done. In that 24-month period, they found that in just 16 miles of interstate between where we are and the river, there was over 2,200 crashes, almost 100 a month, just in 16 miles of interstate. So our partners with the Kentucky Office of Highway Safety and NHTSA realized that there were an issue and wanted to find something that would alleviate the problem. That was how the grant came to be, and involves the partners with Covington, Erlanger, Fort Mitchell, Kenton County, Park Hills, and Villa Hills. Erlanger is the managing agency for the grant project. So as the grant manager, I regularly meet with our law enforcement liaison with the state to monitor the overall progress of the project, the data that goes along with it. So that's what we want to share with you tonight. The goal of the project was to slow down the traffic and create safer roadways for our communities here in northern Kentucky. Obviously, with nearly 100 crashes a month, it was a significant problem just concentrated in that one area that was tying up our resources. But the big thing was, and that's what we wanted to put out there, the corridor project was not about writing tickets. It's about slowing down the traffic and making it safer. Our enforcement is obviously a focus, but the goal is to reduce crash injury through police visibility, obviously enforcement, but our target is against aggressive and inattentive driving and officer safety. So at the start of the project, and still currently, we utilize the media, social media platforms to make sure that we're advertising that we're going to be out there. You know, it's not a sneak attack. We're not out writing citations as a money grab. We tell people we're going to be out there. We want you to slow down. Obviously, the police visibility and the saturation in the area, the intent is to slow traffic down. I threw this in here because I liked it. This was one of our blitz days early on in the campaign, and all of the little blue dots are police icons in the Waze app, things like that, you know, we're out there, we're targeting this area, we're going to be doing enforcement. Still, with all of the media and all of the social media platforms, the apps that clearly established that there were multiple officers out targeting enforcement, our enforcement numbers were still really high. So in the first 2 years, I had gathered data all the way back to the fiscal year 2016. The grants run on the federal fiscal year, October 1st through September 30th. So currently in our current budget year, we're about halfway through this cycle. I had gathered information all the way back to 2016 about our enforcement efforts, and the green highlighted areas are when the corridor project had begun. So you'll see that we targeted speeding, impaired driving, careless driving, texting while driving, failure to move over for emergency vehicles, which endangers our officers. Those are all the aggressive and inattentive behaviors that we're trying to target and change to make things safer. Obviously in there, we're going to get secondary offenses, things that we want to look for like seatbelts and child seat occupant protection that's going to make people safer in the event that there are crashes. And you'll see things like no insurance and no operator's license. Those charges are important as well, simply because in an infrastructure of this roadway that's carrying more than twice the amount of vehicles it should to begin with, we're trying to get these people off the road that shouldn't be there to begin with. People that don't have a driver's license, people that don't carry the insurance on their vehicles, they're putting you all at risk. So you'll see that our numbers from fiscal year 19 into fiscal year 20 increased significantly. Like I said, during that time, we had a high media presence. We actually had reporters ride with one of our officers to see what we were doing and report on the activity and put all of that out there so that the public was aware that we were doing this extra saturated activity in the area. And we still, with the advertisement and everything, the numbers continued to be high. But what was important with all of this, and this is what we're excited to share with you, when the saturation and the enforcement went up, you're going to see in this screen, our collisions have drastically decreased in the corridor. We have seen a decrease of 35% in collisions overall in the categories of injuries, fatality, property damage, and commercial vehicle collisions. That's a huge impact to that corridor area and the safety of our communities. So what does this mean for Erlanger? With all of this, the first thing is people think that it's a money grab. What are our tax dollars going to? None of this funding comes from our budget and our tax dollars. These are all grants that the police department applies for each year. Each year we gather the statistics and we show the data that there is a need for the federal funding. So all of our overtime, the hours that our officers are spending out on the corridor to decrease these collisions are all coming from federally reimbursed funds that support our officers' loaded rates for overtime. So they're covering their overtime, they're covering their benefits, FICA, everything is included in that when we submit for the reimbursement. So this is truly a great partnership with the Kentucky Office of Highway Safety and NHTSA. In addition to the funding for our officers' overtime hours, because these are hours above and beyond their normal shifts. These are hours that they're working, not their 40-hour work shifts that's taking away from the citizens and the activities within the city. These are officers coming out and working additional hours. Kentucky Office of Highway Safety and NHTSA has also been able at times to provide us with equipment to help us in handling these overtimes with handheld lasers and PBTs. So in addition to the overtime, Chief Rader has also capitalized on the opportunity in the creation of the dedicated traffic unit. Now those officers we have 2 officers that their primary function is to deal with traffic collision, traffic enforcement. So the calls that do come out during the day on shift, we have one on each end of each squad, and they handle the primary calls that do continue to come out on the interstate and the traffic enforcement and things throughout the city. So this has really freed up our officers to be more available to handle the activities that are going on within the city. So overall, this has reduced the crashes throughout the city significantly, not just on the interstate, but this has also, in the next slide I'm going to get into, it has partnered with the other grant that we manage, where the Erlanger-Ellesmere Highway Safety Grant. One of the things, let me get back to this because I think it's this, the impaired driving. I wanted to highlight that because as you see, we had DUIs that were occurring regularly on the interstate. 39 in fiscal year 19 started to drop. In the last 2 years, we've had 1 and 0 DUIs on the interstate. The data has indicated that we have successfully displaced impaired driving off the interstate, where cars are driving higher 55, 60, 70 miles an hour. When those crashes occur, there's more likelihood of injuries and fatalities. So we've pushed the impaired driving off the interstate, but the other project that we have through Kentucky Office of Highway Safety and NHTSA is the Erlanger-Ellesmere Partnership Grant, which also provides overtime reimbursement for activity traffic enforcement throughout the city limits of Erlanger. So we also have that, and we are able to, through that, when we're pushing the DUI collisions off the interstate, we're pushing them to secondary roadways where they're traveling at lower speeds, so there's less likelihood of the injuries and the fatalities, and they're easier to detect. So our DUI number and enforcement is increasing in that area, and we're able to handle that through the Erlanger-Ellesmere grant. So with that, that has been throughout the city and the interstate. Our speed-related crashes have decreased over 50%. Our injury crashes have been reduced by 87.5%. That's tremendous because that means when your loved one or you are involved in a crash, the likelihood that you're getting injured is much less likely. Our occupant protection injury collisions are down 25.5%. So our seatbelt enforcement is making an impact on all of this. So, thank you. And if you guys have any questions about any of the grants or...
So I know Kim doesn't want to pat herself on the back, but when she was tasked with this project, I mean, she went full bore and she took it by the horns and she has done a fantastic job. What she didn't mention is she has actually been requested to give her presentation at the national level. There are other states that have actually discussed the activity that she is doing, and they're mirroring programs directly off of what we're doing here in Erlanger. So it's pretty impressive. You know, she mentioned some of the equipment. We missed out on a free car this year, but it is possible that there are cars to come in the future just from the activity that we've done. So Kim has done a really, really good job and should be recognized for how much money she has gotten for the city and how much we're not paying out of payroll, you know, to make this possible. So good job, Kim.
Thank you. We have been successfully able to get additional funding. So. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Claire. Wonderful job, as always. All right. Oh, Ms. Reckers?
My question was, if these programs are, is this something we're going to shoot for renewing for the next fiscal year? Like, how, is this a calendar year grant? Like, how are we assured to continue this program moving forward?
They've been very happy with our numbers, and we have the grant again for starting in, well, it started in October and will go until next October, or I guess September 30th, and then we have no indication that they're going to stop our funding. I mean, we have been year after year after year actually increasing our number for enforcement, and we've been using it all, so.
All right. Can you check, please, for me?
Couldn't have more than one.
You love this job. Okay, you're good? We discussed this is why you're here, right?
I'd have been worried if you had like 19 names or something on there. Be like, where are they? Behind the wall?
Okay. All right. Mayor's report. some really fascinating special presentations today, so a lot of data to take in. I just want to let you all know, so our city attorney and city engineer bids have been put out. They are due next week on the 13th. We are extremely happy with our services that our city attorney and our city engineer, Mr. Viax, I think, stepped out. But we're very happy with our services that we are receiving currently. However, it's a commitment for fiscal responsibility to make sure that we are putting these out to bid, make sure that we are, getting a good deal and just understanding what's available. So we are also working on an RFP for IT services as well. So that will be coming out very soon. And that is my report. Mr. Wolfak, do you have anything to report?
Yes, thank you. I did want to report on some surplus vehicles. There were 4 police vehicles that were declared surplus at the November 1st council meeting. 2 of those were sold on govdeals.com, and it was reported to you that the other 2 did not sell at that time. We tried a different auction house, and the auction closed on January 31st, and both of those vehicles did sell, so we should receive the proceeds from them in about 2 to 3 weeks. And we were really pleased with the results. We netted, the gross was $17,000 for the sum of the 2 vehicles. One went for $10,500 and the other $6,500. There will be commission paid out of that, but in comparison, the other ones went in the $4,000 to $5,000 range. This auction place is called J.J. Kane, and they specifically deal with vehicles. So I think they get a more targeted audience. So we've been very pleased, and I did want to just report those other 2 have been sold.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gatlin?
I have nothing to report tonight, Mayor.
Mr. Glenn?
Okay, to be ultra brief tonight, the one thing I kind of want to report on is Cahill Commons. So the Phase 1 and Phase 2 construction drawings have been going on this budget year, and we're going to bid on the Phase 1 capital improvements, and our bid opening is February 21st. So that'll be exciting. Then we'll finish up the Phase 2 contract drawings and have that bid here this budget year, hoping to start on that as soon as possible, and the next budget year, making it kind of a seamless project. Really, that's all I have to say. All of our other projects are still on hold, waiting for spring weather to come. If you have any questions, let me know. Thank you.
Okay. Any other reports from department heads? Ms. Kramer?
Yes, I just wanted to report, I know the mayor spoke on it last council, but Budget Boot Camp is for April 15th. Put that on your calendars. And the other thing I wanted to report is the mayor has sent out the survey for all council to take that. And so far, I've only received 4 responses. So if you want to include your opinions for the budget for fiscal year 24, we value your input, and I've only received 4, so.
Is that the quality of life survey?
Yes.
So that has to do with the budget?
Yes.
Yeah, it's talking about areas of focus and,
Okay. I was not connecting those 2 things together. Because it came out as the quality of life survey and didn't say anything about the budget. So I did not, so are we using the results of the quality of life survey as
we are.
direction for the budget?
A broad direction. I mean, to understand where you guys want to head for funding and, I mean, from what we've seen so far from 4 individuals, codes enforcement seems to be a hot button on something that we need to make sure we're paying attention to. So it's more high level, like directionary advice. Ms. Kyle?
We did this once before. It's been a while. I'd say maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I think when Mark Fields was still here, so probably pre-Kramer time. And I found it very useful. So when I did the survey, because I was one of the 4 that turned it in, I assumed that's what it was for, because we've done it before. And it's a real good tool because you're prioritizing what you think is important for the fiscal year, you know. The questions are all different, so you have to read them. I mean, sometimes I rated something really high. It depended on how the question was asked, but it is very helpful when you're doing the budget because it shows, you know, where our problem areas are, you know, what we want to focus on. I shouldn't say problem areas, but what do we want to attack, you know? So it's good for the budget.
Thanks, Ms. Kyle. I'll just read what had gone out. It says the City of Erlanger conducted a quality of life survey in the fall of 2022. The survey was to gauge residents' opinion on city services and how they perceive the future challenges to the community. As part of our budget planning process, we value City Council's input. Please utilize this survey to help us set priorities for fiscal year 2024. The overall goal is to continue to make Erlanger a great place to live, work, and play. Ms. Reckers?
So I did the survey and I didn't, it's not anonymous. I don't really care. I'm very passionate about very certain things and I was happy to put that in the survey. But I also participated in the survey as a resident that was sent in the fall. I know they're different, but the way that this presented, I thought that I was actually filling it out a second time. So I think that that's maybe where there was confusion. So, I mean, if this is what is going to, you know, potentially change, you know, some of the budgeting factors and prioritization, I would definitely encourage my peers to complete the survey, but I did not interpret it similarly to how you know, I guess how it was supposed to be interpreted. So I did complete it, but I didn't interpret it that way, just so we're clear. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it just gives us a good idea of, I mean, especially in the budget boot camp when we're talking about the individual departments and making sure that we're identifying what's important to you guys and what to talk about, go into further detail, just so we know how to properly communicate. Ms. Jasper Lucas?
So when I complete it this time, so are we completing the same survey that residents completed?
It is not the same
Okay,
survey.
that was confusing because we were sent the results of what the community took, and then we were sent a link, and I didn't know, I thought this one seemed different, and I didn't know if we were supposed to be completing, and like Ms. Rucker said, am I completing this as a resident, or am I completing this as a council member?
Well, and that's why,
And I read the email,
yeah,
but
okay.
I was confused about whether or not this was the same thing that residents were sent, or if this was strictly for council.
This one was different.
Okay. So are we also taking into consideration what residents said?
Yep, we are funneling all that information, and that's why you
Okay.
also received the PowerPoint
Right.
presentation with the
And
results.
And I read through that, and then I asked how many people responded, because I don't find it statistically valid.
Okay.
I actually started printing the whole thing out, and then when I found out how many people responded, I stopped.
Okay.
Because to me, out of 19,000 residents, the fact that we only targeted homeowners, basically, is going to significantly impact how they answer the questions. And we only received like 200 and something responses.
260.
Right. So I don't find that to be enough to base budget decisions on. So, I mean, that's just my opinion, but it was
Okay.
it was just confusing. I will go back and take it now that I understand that this is specific to council.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Ms. Kramer, do you have anything else? Ms. Hoffman?
The only thing I have is I just want to recognize Bill Martin. He is our person that we are recognizing this month whose name is on the Friendship Garden wall, and you can go to our website and find out all the wonderful things that Bill did for the city. That's all I have.
Okay, are there any other department heads that would like to give a report?
I just want to recognize the 2 grants that were given out in the month of January. Nicely's completed a new parking lot paving project at their building, and that looks terrific. So congratulations to them. That was done through the Small Business Grant. And then, excuse me, we issued the first ever demo grant. Hopefully you've had a chance to drive by and see that demo that took place at 4120 Dixie Highway. And congratulations to the Omar family on that project. We hope to see them develop a new restaurant on that site soon.
Thank you, Ms. Randall. All right. Chief, you good? Okay. All right, very good. All right, are there any reports from task force representatives this evening? Ms. Nicely?
Mayor, this isn't a task force. I just wanted to back up and address Chief Rader, if I could, for a second. Chief, I wanted to thank you for letting me be a part and participate in, I believe it was called the Response to Resistance Simulator, if I'm correct. Officer Eagler was very professional, and my brother and I actually participated and observed some officers doing the training. And boy, I learn all the time. I witness something you all do. I mean, it's really scary stuff. So thank you so much. I learned a lot, and I'm not sure I could do what you guys do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, what's neat about that is the scenarios are all actual scenarios that not necessarily us, but law enforcement has responded to in this year. And they're updated every year, and a lot of times people come in and it is an eye-opener. So glad you could participate.
Thank you.
Ms. Jasper Lucas?
I have 2 task forces to report on quickly. The Cherry Hill semi-truck issue task force will meet on Monday, February 13th at 5 p.m. Here at the City Building. Just a few things to report. There are some new flashing signs that have been installed at Sycamore Tree last week, and then Boone County also installed delineators at Queensway last week. They are going to evaluate how they work at Queensway before moving on to the other locations. And then Officer Nezzi has made some additional progress on updates to the GPS systems. So we'll have more details on that during the task force meeting. And then the other item is the Financial Accountability Task Force will meet next Friday, the 17th at 8:30 a.m.
All right. Ms. Hoffman, do we have any bids tonight?
There's just a few other bids that we have them listed on our website. I also send them out in the council packets. It's Public Works has their Hickory street project and sewer project, and there is also the police department's, their rifles bid. That's in the process right now.
Okay, thank you. All right, is there any unfinished business? Ms. Wilson? Can you click your microphone? There you go.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, I just want to thank the city of Erlanger for sponsoring me to attend the Kentucky League of Cities orientation, and it was marvelous. And it definitely is a tool to be used to prep new council members, and I greatly appreciate that. The bags that you have in your seats, that you receive in your seats, that's where that came from. It came from the different vendors and presenters at this training session. And I just wanted to share a piece of it with you all. And my fellow council person over there, Councilman Bill, he was also in attendance. And so it was a grateful, and I'm very grateful for being able to attend it. And thank you for thinking of that. I mean, that is the greatest thing ever, to be able to train a new council person in this manner. And I look forward to other things. And I also have an announcement regarding the students at Lloyd, and in the community, we have seniors, females and male, who aren't going to attend their proms or their graduation, well, not graduation, but homecomings, because they don't have the dress, the attire. And my granddaughter, Destiny Orrin, she is sponsoring a giveaway of prom dresses and suits for individual in need. These are giveaways. She's already receiving donations for this, and I would like for the council to, I guess, promote it, help to promote it. We would definitely let Lloyd High School and other students, because they don't have to be students at Lloyd to receive these gowns and suits, but just having a need to need those things in order to participate in something like their prom and homecoming. And so I have a flyer here, and I will be passing that down to give you more information regarding that. And finally, the city of Erlanger, I would like to make a motion for to revitalize the task force of diversity, a diversity task force. And this is to bring out individuals of various races, cultures, and abilities. And right now, we don't have that program in place, and I would like to help to organize such a program, to bring individuals out that have talents and skills of different cultures, to bring them out in this grand city of Erlanger. I love Erlanger, and to bring these things out. And so that's all. I would like to also join the City Beautification Task Force, Parks Task Force, and our Strategic Plan Task Force, and Emergency Preparation Task Force. Now, I know I might not be able to get into all of them, but I would like to learn more about them and select. I've been invited to join the task force, and I would like to do that.
Okay.
Yes.
The task force information, it'll come out in an email. It'll have the notice of when and where it's going to be held. So just watch your email, and then also, the council members will announce when their task forces are meeting as well. So you're more than welcome to attend any of them.
Thank you so much. And I just like to also ask for your patience, because I'm still learning my phone.
Of course.
I'm still learning the phone and how to get the email and all of that information. And Jim is doing a fabulous job with working with me to help me to pick up on those things.
I love hearing Jim White praise.
Yes.
We love him.
Yes, he's great. He really is.
That's awesome.
Thank
So you did make a motion.
Yes,
so
I'd
that-
like to make a motion
Okay.
for our task force.
Okay, so you made a motion on the floor to revitalize the diversity task force. This was a task force that Councilwoman Jasper Lucas had been the chairperson of.
Yes.
So I don't know if you want to be the chairperson, or if she wants to be the chairperson, or how you want to make that work, if you're revitalizing the same task force. We've never had this situation before, so.
I would like to head it up. and,
Okay. Okay. Ms. Jasper Lucas, are you okay with that, or do you have any comments?
No.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor to create a new task force. Is there a second to that motion? Mr. Cahill? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carried. Ms. Wilson, you'll just have to get with Sherry and figure out a date that you want to meet, and a location if you want to meet right here. And we just make sure that no other task force is going on at that time. And then you can, Sherry will take care of the notice that goes out. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Ms. Nicely?
Ms. Wilson, I have some information. I'm part of Covington Business Council. We meet tomorrow morning. There is an outfit and an organization called Cinderella's Closet. They provide from dresses to garments to jewelry. They basically have fairy godmothers that take a woman under their wings, and maybe your daughter might want to partner with them to have more opportunities. I'll email you the information tomorrow. I'll be meeting with Covington Business Council, and I can get that to you. Thank you. It sounds like a great plan, but maybe you all can work together because it's totally free, and they do suit everybody up for shoes, jewelry, everything, the whole 9 yards. To have a wonderful day. Thanks.
All right. Any new business? All right. Legislation, Mr. Gatlin.
Yes, first is an ordinance repealing section 96.29 of the Erlanger Code of Ordinances and ordinance number 2343 related to restrictions of use of organized athletic teams at Flagship Park. The change that's being made is what's underlined, that the prohibitions will continue at Flagship Park, except for competition scrimmages, excluding running groups, and we're adding the language, competition scrimmages and meets of any kind between or among organizations or athletic teams.
All right, and that's
First reading.
a first reading. Ms. Hoffman, if you can note in the minutes the first reading of this ordinance. Mr. Gatlin.
Yeah. Next, we have the budget amendment. My understanding is there's going to be a motion on this. All right.
Sorry, I just want to do everything the right way. So I'm making a motion that we table the section related to moving the $217,820 from general government / building and zoning budget to public works budget. Keep the $2 million in additional funds that will be transferred from the general fund to the capital fund for the public works facility. Is that good enough?
I'm sorry. I think the motion, instead of a motion to table, would be just a motion to strike the budget amendment of the 217,820.
Motion to strike.
Yeah.
What I said before.
Yep.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Ms. Reckers, seconds. I'm sorry? Oh, okay. Any discussion? Ms. Guile?
I just have a question. The 217,000, refresh my memory, is that because we're moving the codes people to Public Works? Because I thought we already discussed that.
Yeah, so the salary and fringe benefits of Steve Canfield, Daryl Jewett, and the small amount of Mark Stewart totals $193,320 of the movement. And then there is $400 of printing and duplicating, $2,375 of payment to board members. There is $750 of uniforms and clothing. There is $18,100 for technical supplies, which that's our software system. There is $485 of dues and subscriptions, and there's $2,390 of travel, training, and meetings. So that is a total of $24,500. So the salary plus the fringe benefits of $193,320 plus the $24,500, that equals the $217,820 that is moving over, and that's a difference of so $165,985 is what is not being moved over. It's what's left of Mark Stewart's salary. It is the professional services contract for Sean Sims. So that 165,985 is what is not moving over, and that'll remain in Gen Gov and not be spent.
And the purpose of this was to move it to Public Works because that's
Where it's
where it's,
being housed now. So what,
yeah. So
what,
it doesn't mean we're going to spend it, just means we're moving it because we don't have that codes department anymore.
yeah, so we moved the codes officers, so Steve Canfield and then Daryl Jewett, their salary and benefits, they're incorporated in that. What made this come to light was in Paycor, our payroll software, when Ms. Kramer was doing the financials. We ran it by John Chamberlain, and because technically they are now in PW versus Gen Gov, he said it's to clean it up and move their salaries into where they're actually being paid out in Paycor. So she said that, and I can let her speak, she could do it by like just journal entries, and it could stay in the Gen Gov budget. And, you know, John Chamberlain said it's just cleaner this way, but
Okay, that's
did
what
I explain
that's
that
what I
right?
thought.
Okay.
That's why I thought, and that's why I was confused when somebody said we hadn't discussed it or whatever. Yeah, I thought we did. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Reckers?
So, and I know we've talked about this before, but I would really appreciate in the future being provided everything on the Friday before the meeting. I know that wasn't the case because of various situations, but I don't think that there would be a motion to table if we had been provided everything in advance. And I completely understand like the mechanics and, you know, the necessity to move it over and how the GLs are paid out. I completely understand it. I seconded so it could be heard.
Sure.
Whether I agree with the underlying substance or not, that's irrelevant. But I really ask, and because getting, you know, Ms. Jasper Lucas mentioned earlier, we're getting emails at 5 o'clock with information. It can be a lot, particularly coming into a meeting. It's just easier if we get it a couple days before so that we can digest it well in advance and things can move probably more smoothly. Just, you know, I know we've talked about that in the past. I'm just begging and urging for that to be the case moving forward. I'm not going to vote again, or I'm not going to vote in favor of splicing it up. It's at the end of the day, it's not going to change anything. I don't want you to have to do journal entries until we pass it, or whatever the case may be. I just really would love this in advance because that hurry up and it just doesn't vibe really well when we're talking about financials. That's just my personal preference and that of many of my peers. It can give the impression that we're not being transparent when I am sure that that is not the case. So, thank you.
Yeah, and I apologize. I honestly thought you had this particular document that I'm holding that kind of details out the 217 that we had talked about at the caucus meeting. So this is kind of the key document that really drills down. Okay. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. Ms. Jasper Lucas?
Just have a comment to make as well related to what Ms. Recker said. This is much easier to understand than what was discussed during the caucus meeting, and that's why we asked for it. So according to Kara's email, it was sent out by her on January 19th. We got it today. So I'm not...
And I apologize. I assumed you guys already had this particular document. I did not realize that that wasn't in the original packet, because when I got it in an email, it was the budget amendment and then this detail.
Okay.
I did not realize that you all didn't receive that.
This is so much easier to understand, but to back up, to piggyback on what Ms. Recker said, when we get it the day of the meeting, it gives the impression that, well, first of all, it restricts the amount of time that we have to ask questions about it. and to make sure that we understand it and digest it. So it just exudes non-transparency. And it's very, very, very frustrating to get items on a Friday and think that's everything, and then realize when I've had time to go through it over the weekend that it's still not what I asked for, and to have to ask for it again today, and then finally be given the information. It doesn't sit well with me. And when it happens,
And I've already apologized, and I have expressed that I thought you all
I understand
had
that.
this information.
If it wasn't-
And it is my fault.
Okay,
And
if
I
it-
am sorry.
if it wasn't a regular occurrence, I wouldn't be pointing it out.
Okay.
So, thank
Okay.
you. That is the
Any
only
further-
reason that I'm asking to table it, because I'm just not going to continue to not have time to review information.
Okay. And I thought we had already reviewed it in the caucus meeting. Let's do a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Cahill?
No, ma'am.
Ms. Skidmore?
No, ma'am.
Ms. Kyle?
No, ma'am.
Ms. Jasper Lucas?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Wilson?
No, ma'am.
Ms. Nicely?
No, ma'am.
Ms. Reckers?
No, ma'am.
Okay, motion failed.
All right, assuming there's no other motions, I'll move forward with the first reading. This is an ordinance of the City of Erlanger in Kenton County, Kentucky, amending Erlanger ordinance numbers 2542, 2543, and 2548, and the budget adopted thereby for the City of Erlanger for the fiscal year beginning on July 1, 2022, and ending on June 30th, 2023. As is discussed, there's two budget amendments here. One is the $217,820 that's being moved from general government to Public Works, and the other is $2 million in additional funds that will be transferred from the general fund to the capital fund for the Public Works facility that was discussed at the January 31st special meeting. This is just a first reading.
Okay. Ms. Hoffman, if you can note in the minutes the first reading of this ordinance.
All right, next we have ordinance amending section 92.01 of the Erlanger Code of Ordinances, updating the Uniform Fire Code adopted to the 2018 edition. This is just a housekeeping matter, which is updating our ordinance that we now are adopting the 2018 edition of the National Fire Protection Association manual. It's also a first reading. I'm struggling in that, I'm sorry.
I thought you were just going to keep adding words
No.
to the end.
It's also a first reading. All right, finally, we have a municipal order of the City of Erlanger in Kenton County, Kentucky, making the written determinations required by KRS 82083 for the sale or other disposition of property owned by the city. You can see that there are 4 items that are being auctioned. They are all 3 weed eaters and a power blower, and they are going to be traded in for similar items. We do need a motion and second on that, and a vote.
Okay. Do I entertain a motion that we adopt this municipal order as read? Ms. Kyle, Ms. Reckers, any discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Are there any announcements this evening? All right. Do I entertain a motion that we adjourn? Ms. Reckers, Ms. Nicely, any discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Have a good evening.